everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Christine Pettit, Executive Director of Long Beach Forward. I'm here today with Norberto Lopez, Project Director for Long Beach Residents Empowered. Hello, Beto.
Hello, Christine. How's it going? Thank you so much for having me here. Really excited to be a part of the series. I saw the first one and I was like, oh, I wonder if I'll get invited. And then I received the email, about a month later, and I was like, okay, here we go. And so I'm
Here
really
you
happy to be here.
go. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to have you here today. This storytelling series was created to connect with nonprofit leaders during the COVID-19 pandemic and to see how organizations and the people in them were navigating these new realities. And now over the last few months, we've seen major demonstrations and movement across the US and throughout the world in affirmation of Black lives and against police brutality. So thank you again, Beto, for agreeing to do this interview with me. This is an important time to connect for sure. To start out, will you just share a little bit about yourself and the work that Long Beach Residents Empowered, also known as LBRE, does?
Yes, most dev. So, hello, everybody. Once again, my name is Norberto, current project director at Libre. Been on the team for about 9 months, but have been organizing in the city of Long Beach for approximately 5 years, going on to 6 years. Started off as a Cal State student at Long Beach State and graduated in 2017. Joined the Housing Long Beach team, was there for about a year. Then did the WW campaign as well, so help protect working women in Long Beach in the hotel industry. And then I ended up in San Diego for some time, helping out at a asylum shelter out at the border and ensuring that we helped out folks who were seeking asylum here in the United States. Came back, joined Greater Long Beach Interfaith Community Organization, also known as ICO, and was a part of their team for 6 months. So been around different organizing circles, so I have a couple experience both in like labor organizing, housing organizing, and faith-based organizing, and now currently serving at LBRE. And LBRE is a tenants' rights advocacy group in the city of Long Beach. Started off in 2016, so fairly new, young organization with a lot of energy and power, and definitely excited, to be able to service the community during these tough, difficult times that we're facing. And so we do anything from tenant advocacy, right? Not just at the policy level, but also at the ground level. When tenants are being harassed or they receive a notice by the landlord, we're there to ensure we support that family and walk them through the process. And then we also involved at the policy level, right? Trying to ensure that we pass pro-tenant policies in city council, but also supporting work at the state and at the national level. And I think that pretty much sums up a little bit about who Libre is.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing about yourself and about the work that you're doing with LBRE too. It's so important, and even more so during this time. So what shifts has LBRE had to make in light of COVID-19, and how are you navigating those shifts?
I think like many of the organizations, and not just organizations, but businesses and people, having to move everything indoors and just staying home has been the biggest shift. Organizing in itself is a beautiful, like job opportunity to be able to connect with people, going to their houses, connecting with them, ensuring that they're okay. And then due to like the current pandemic that we're in, not being able to do that has definitely been a big impact, not only on myself, but many other organizers that I know. We love being able to catch up with our resident leaders, right? Our community leaders, catching up over some coffee or a meal. And so also our meetings, right? When we have our little team meetings, organizer meetings, they're in person, so we're able to hug each other, see each other, pass good energy and vibes to each other. And now we have to do it over a Zoom call. And so it definitely isn't the same. But, we also got to look at it from a point of, industrialization and how everything is changing, not just during this pandemic, but how it's been changing over the past, decade. And, at the end of the day, it's like, where are we going to end up at? We still don't know when this pandemic is going to be over. But nonetheless, a lot of our work, we're still doing direct services, meaning that, we're still talking to people directly. They call our phone line and we're able to assist them in that way. Unless it's something major whether it's like a tenant being locked out of their unit, then we have to show up. And so then we put ourselves at risk during this pandemic, of catching something. to ensure that we keep people home. But it's a
Mm-hmm.
risk that that comes with the job that we do, and so sometimes we focus a lot on other industries. But I feel like community organizing or even just organizing in general isn't seen as like an essential service, but we're providing a very essential service and ensuring that we keep people home. And so a lot of the shift has just been, not being able to see people and interact with people in person,
Mm-hmm.
share moments with them. Just right before the pandemic hit, we were getting ready to launch our first official Baile Rentero, which is an event, for our
Mm.
community to come together and just dance. Not
Mm.
nothing political, nothing about hey, it's just come out, learn a little bit about your rights and dance. And right, like 3 days before it happened, like they said, okay, we got to shut down, so we had to like cancel our event. But we were able to host an online version of it, and it was beautiful. Um, but definitely not the same.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know that connection is such an important part of community organizing, and the relationships that you have built with fellow organizers, but also the residents that you work with. I know that they can still feel that connection in these times, but I know you've had to be creative about how to maintain that connection. And like you said, sometimes even put yourself at risk when you're coming to the assistance of somebody. So I just want to, thank you for that, and also just acknowledge that that is a critical piece of, where we're at right now, is figuring out how to establish and keep that connection. And it's super critical in community organizing. I did just want to pause and acknowledge Carolina was on screen for a little bit from the nonprofit partnership. We were having a little bit of technical difficulties, and I know she's trying to jump off, so I'm not sure what's showing on Facebook Live or not. But we appreciate Carolina so much. She's usually the face that you don't see during these productions, but she's behind the scenes helping us out. So. And she says she's now off the screen, but I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you in case any of the viewers were wondering who that was hanging out with us. So just going back to, the folks, we just talked about connection. How has COVID-19 impacted the people that you work with and are connected to?
So, like I said, Libre is a tenant advocacy group. So, housing has been one of the major issues, prior to COVID-19, but now has just become like the top front issue around the nation and around the world in general. And, right now with the unemployment rate, in Long Beach, being reported around 20%, that's just what is known. But we also have to take into account the undocumented community who doesn't fall into those numbers. So that number can range up to 25, 30%, if we're being honest. And so a lot of tenants right now aren't able to pay the rent. So we have to be, on the move all the time, not only in policy fights, but aiding tenants and sending in those letters to the landlords and letting them know that, under Long Beach Municipal Code, they can be evicted for non-payment of rent, and that they'll have 12 months to pay back that rent. And, we've moved the, from 6 months to 12-month payback period. But we understand that in the long term run, a lot of tenants may not be able to pay back that rent. But for right now, at least they're guaranteed a roof over their head, and they're not having to worry if they're going to be in the street. The other thing is that we're also telling people that, hey, pay for your food first, then your rent, right? Because we don't want people to then be hungry just because they have a roof over their head. What good does that do, right? If you're ending up dying in your home, and it's that serious, because like we have people who are already homeless. We have a homeless issue. It's a crisis. It's not even an issue. It's a crisis that we're facing, and so the numbers, right, just reflect that as well. There's been an increase on the homeless count in Long Beach, and so when we talk about what happens after COVID is like the unknown, because as of right now, there was a study done by UCLA, and they're expecting, in between 30 to 160,000 evictions to happen. And so, and that's just like around LA County. It's not even across like state of California. And so for us as a tenant advocacy group, we're already seeing those effects at the local level. And it's not just evictions for non-payment of rent, but also because companies are continuing to remodel their units and kick people out. because under the state law, there's a couple holes that are being taken advantage of, and we were able to close one of them to a certain extent, which made the process a little lengthier for the landlord to be able to evict. But they're still doing it up at this point. I have an entire building that has received 60-day notices for substantial rehab. So not only are they worried about not being able to pay the rent, but now they're worried about getting kicked out because the landlord is trying to remodel. And although there is a standing rule across the state of California from the Judicial Council saying that people won't get evicted, people don't know that. It's our job as an organization, as community, to help educate one another and pass the word that, hey, you won't get evicted. But there's also, a lot of fear amongst the community, and that's real. And we hear it all the time. People are worried that if I don't pay my rent, like they're gonna ruin my credit. I'm not gonna be able to rent somewhere else. And where do these fears come from? It's what the landlords are telling the tenants. And so, how has COVID affected our residents or our members? It's in that form, right? That, hey, we're not able to pay our rent, and now we're scared to get evicted, and the landlord is telling us that they're gonna kick us out, and that the sheriff is gonna come lock us out. How real is that? Hey, we got to look into every case individually because every case is different. There's so many reasons on why landlords are, coming down on tenants, and we get it. They're stressing out too because they got to pay their mortgages, but like, what are we going to do if people can't pay? How are they supposed to pay? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why the work that you're doing right now is so critical. I mean, housing is just a base level, like in terms of staying safe and healthy, having housing, having adequate food. And these are things that people struggled with pre-COVID. But COVID has really exacerbated it as people are, losing their sources of income and just in these very precarious situations. I know during this time this has also put a lot of pressure on your organizing. We were talking earlier about how tonight, just right after this interview, there will be a critical item at City Council, and you and the organizations you work in collaboration with have been at council almost every week for the last several months. Can you just share a little bit about that and what's going on?
I mean, it's been very intense to a point that there hasn't been enough time to reflect on every victory that we've had, because at the end of the day, they are victories, right? We came into this COVID situation, right, with a victory in hand, which was closing the loophole. We weren't expecting a pandemic to hit, and now it hit, and so we had to shift gears, and we didn't know to what level, but we've been pretty much at City Council almost every single time they've met, fighting for a housing item, ensuring that we extend the eviction moratorium, ensuring that we kill the repayment plan. Now we have inclusionary housing on the agenda for tonight, and also the extension of the eviction moratorium. And as of right now, we were advocating for Long Beach to maintain the ordinance and extend it for another 60 days, but there's not enough political will to do that. So they're going to go ahead and most likely pass an ordinance that says 30 days. So then we have to come back at it in another 30 days. And what does that mean? It's not usually 30 days, it's 2 weeks right after this vote, because it takes 2 votes in order to pass something. So we've been at it for quite some time now, going back and forth. The rental assistance program is another problem, that we advocated. We wanted there to be protections for tenants. What did the city council say? They said no. So now we're stuck with the program that puts all the labor on the tenant, and then the landlord has an ultimate say on whether they accept the money or not, which leaves many tenants vulnerable after they've done all this work to ensure they qualified for this program to get denied just because the landlord doesn't agree to receive this money. So it's been very difficult, and it's not just policy work. Like, we'd also do the one-on-ones, right? The basic organizing, the helping out a tenant when they're going through an issue at their location, and assisting them, with whatever they need. Most of the calls that we've received have been harassment calls. Hey, my landlord is threatening me that they're gonna lock me out. Hey, the landlord is telling me that they're gonna, kick me out of my unit, and that they're gonna ruin my credit. And some of these property management companies are just relentless. They think they're above the law, and they're taking advantage of the fear that people have at this current moment. Um, and I will highlight that there are some good landlords that are understanding of the tenant situation, and these are the small landlords,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have the corporate landlords who are coming down on tenants because they aren't collecting rent.
Mm.
We have the small landlords who are being more understanding, and it's due to the relationships that they carry,
Mm-hmm.
because at least in the smaller properties, the landlord knows the tenant, and so they're
Mm.
able to work something out. But then we have the bigger company owned, buildings and those side where we're having a lot of the major issues. We at the beginning of the pandemic, companies were issuing not only 60-day notices, but they were also issuing utility shutoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to help organize, tenants in order to fight back against that. And yeah, we were successful, but it gets to a point where you're constantly splitting yourself in between policy fight and then a ground fight.
Right.
So it's really hard, but luckily, we've been able to empower so many tenants that they're fighting back on their own. They just kind of
Mm-hmm.
give us a call and give us, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, that sounds great. You're planning on your own with your neighbors. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the goal of LBRE, right? To empower tenants to fight back on their own, where they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to always, come to the organization for support, where they can self-support one another. And that's what we've been able to really see during this pandemic is the unification of people who at one point never talked to each other. They were just neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hear that empowerment, which is part of your name and also what is happening in practice too. Just as people are organizing, it's just unjust. The inhumanity of utility shutoffs or evictions, during a crisis, and yet you're working with people to support one another and have victories even in this time. And I know it's challenging because, like you said, going to council for a 30-day policy, and then that means you have to turn around basically the next week and work on the next one, right? Very little happens in our council in 30 days. So the fact that it's like moving at this pace is, I think it's like a recipe for burnout too. But I know, there's a lot of people in the fight, but I also know it's not easy. And I think it's just so important that we're seeing with this pandemic, the timeline is uncertain. And it's not enough to just be like, oh, we'll do this for 30 days or whatever. Like we don't know the exact timeline, but it's going to be a long time until we're in a more stable place as a society. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, during this time, I think it serves to us as a society, to really reflect on where we stand with our morals and our values.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Under the current, administration that we're also in, a lot of people are being tested
Mm-hmm.
on where they are going to stand, right? On what side of history are you going to be on? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Whether whatever religion you are, but like, are we here as brothers and sisters to support one another? Or are we here to divide each other?
Mm-hmm.
And at this moment, I think that we really have to look into our hearts and really try to support each other in the best way that we can. And yes, we're seeing a lot of like mutual aid support groups that are popping up
Mm-hmm.
and offering, any type of like food that they can give to the families that need it. We have the Undocu Fund, right, that was created by community organizations, to help support undocumented folks. But
Mm-hmm.
the need is so high that it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to really meet that need on your own, right, as nonprofits. And trying to ask people to give you money when they themselves are struggling is a little hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we see the city, you know, posting on social media that they receive this much money from the state or the federal government, and we also understand that they're going to be in a deficit. But I think that right now, like the call for defunding the police is one of the biggest calls that is being
Mm-hmm.
made. And so, how do we really reallocate money in
Mm-hmm.
order to help support our communities to prevent a lot of the issues? And my background is sociology,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Me
understanding
too.
that so understanding that why a lot of people are quick to judge someone on why they committed a crime, but they never look at what caused that person to commit that crime. And I think right now, what happened on May 31st, a lot of the police folks or like pro police council members are quick to try to condemn that and call it violence.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you tell someone that that's violence when, they finally had an opportunity to get something? They have to go get it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, as much as it hurt, to see the small businesses, get hurt, a lot of small businesses said, it's okay, I have my insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of more help went quickly to support the small businesses rather than the communities that needed it the most. And so that's where I come back to the point that I made earlier. This is where we really have to touch on our morals and our values and where we stand, in the future projections of our society. And if
Mm-hmm.
we want to see it as just Long Beach, where does Long Beach stand in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Now more than ever is, any new policy that comes out has to really be looked at from a moral perspective, an equitable perspective, and checking in with our own values. Or
Mm-hmm.
are we doing the right thing for the future?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Long Beach has the opportunity to, be on the right side of history. And right now, I know you're part of the Coalition for the People's Budget. And you touched on, moving resources away from policing and towards social services and support. What would that mean for the communities that you work with?
Most def. So, I mean, around the housing aspect, right? For us, the biggest need is that Long Beach needs its own housing department, a place where tenants and landlords can go to, right? Where it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
fall on the community organizations that are doing their best to ensure that we educate everything on some stuff that the city should be doing. And that's one of the asks that we're asking for, is that the city should have their own housing department that allows to keep up to date, housing policies, and allows to
Mm-hmm.
inform tenants and landlords on what their rights are and how to do things, and a place where, tenants can even dispute an eviction in the near future. That would be
Mm-hmm.
ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Within that, department, we're also asking for like the right to counsel. Right to counsel is, a representation for someone who's low income or doesn't qualify or can't pay for representation in court when they're being evicted. 94% of the cases that go unrepresented will lose, right? So, like,
Mm-hmm.
meaning if you don't have an attorney, you will lose your case in eviction court. It's really hard for you to come out victorious in
Mm-hmm.
eviction court. So, we're asking, that the city allocate funds to ensure that we have a right to counsel program in the city of Long Beach to help prevent homelessness. If we can keep people in their homes, we can prevent more people ending up in the streets. And the other thing is that we're asking for more affordable housing. The city council has a chance to do that tonight at the inclusionary housing conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Inclusionary housing is one of those policies that puts an X amount or X amount of percentage of units into affordable housing units. But we also know that there are flaws within those policies, and it all depends on how much teeth this policy has. And as of right now, the way that it's being set up or proposed is 6% is being allotted for low income, and then
Mm-hmm.
5% for very for moderate income folks. And
Mm-hmm.
so that doesn't really do much for the very low income community, which is a lot of folks that
Mm-hmm.
need housing as of right now. And rent right now from the one bedroom like is costing you in Long Beach around $1,500. How do you pay for that? Especially when you have to keep a family going. So
Right.
I think for us, a lot of it is if we reallocate, money from the police department into social services and really take care of the people, I
Mm-hmm.
think that we'll be in a better position as a city, and we'll have a healthier city.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it always comes down to narrative and who controls the narrative, and who defines public safety.
Mm-hmm.
And as a people's budget, like working group, we're asking them to defund the police in order to really allocate money to social services to help protect our communities and keep them in Long Beach,
Mm-hmm.
ensuring that we really look towards a better future, because a better future is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you and Libre are part of many coalition efforts, and just the issue of housing is so connected to all of our movements and really the needs of our community. So we've talked about how intense this time is. What are you doing for self-care during this time?
So for me, I like to go fishing. So fishing is one of the things
Mm.
that I just love. Many people say it's a Cancer sign that I love the ocean. The ocean is always going to be my peaceful, restful place. And so, when this whole COVID stuff is like when it was at a peak and right now it's reaching that peak again, I was
Mm-hmm.
going just for drives around, PCH, Long
Mm-hmm.
Beach, just trying to get a view of the ocean down
Mm-hmm.
Ocean Boulevard, keeping myself grounded and knowing that, I got to take care of myself as well because this fight is a long fight and not going to be over anytime soon. And as this pandemic gets worse, like we understand that the need for support is going to be higher. And so, yeah, I've been able to, go fishing and just kind of relax myself a bit near the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
reflect, and just take it day by day and understanding that it's okay to say, no, and it's okay to understand myself, right? And being
Mm-hmm.
able to really reflect that I can't do it all, or that we can't do it all, or that, no
Mm-hmm.
matter how much we do right now, like we have long ways to go. And so we kind
Mm-hmm.
of have to also preserve ourselves in order to be ready for the longer fight ahead of us.
Absolutely. Well, as a fellow Cancerian, I can relate to that need to be and see the water, or be with or see the water. Yeah. When's your birthday?
June 23rd. So
Oh, did I miss it? Maybe I said happy birthday,
yeah.
but if I
No,
didn't,
you did.
happy birthday. Okay. I was
You
like,
did.
wait. Cool. Mine was yesterday. So, yes.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Birthdays all around. So, during this time, do you see any glimmers of hope or coming out of this time?
I do. I do. I think that, with the current and also uplifting, the movement, for Black Lives, right? Black
Mm-hmm.
Lives Matter. And, the bell has been ringing for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Black Lives Matter movement isn't a new thing or a moment. It's
Right.
been happening for many, many years now.
Right.
And I think finally some of the policymakers are waking up and they're, really trying to make things more equitable.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a glimmer of hope, but I think until we really see action,
Mm-hmm.
we'll be able to really say things are changing. There's a lot of people that can do a lot of symbolic things but mean nothing because they don't have the great intention. But if we're really going to take equity into consideration and make it a driving force behind the policies that are passed now and into, the near future, I think that we have a chance to really changing, the way that not just Long Beach operates, but the rest of the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And props to like BLM for uplifting a lot of the struggles and really making the call to action and people showing up to the streets and demanding change. We look at the civil rights movement and what they did, and I think we're living in that moment, and we've been living
Mm-hmm.
in that moment for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now more than ever, even the folks who weren't as engaged are getting engaged. I think that the answer to our liberation are going to be the youth. The youth are coming in with so much knowledge, and so like they're seeing it happen, and they're participating in it and understanding that change needs to happen. And so I'm very hopeful that the youth that are currently at home and seeing their parents struggle will be the glimmer of hope that leads us into that brighter future that we are all fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
um, and nonetheless, I think that even within like the foundational world, I think that we have to stop looking at the work as charity work and really do like systems change work and
Mm-hmm.
fund that, because that's where we really have to see, um, what changes can we really do. And I'm very positive about where we're heading,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's gonna take all of us for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about why it's so important to fund organizing work in particular?
Oh yes, most def. Because as someone who has seen it, and done both sides of charity and organizing,
Mm-hmm.
it's like charity, yeah, you have to X amount of number were fed or X amount of people were served. Organizing is like, what are you really doing with that person that you're helping, right?
Mm-hmm.
What tools are you giving them to self sustain or self motivate or self empower themselves? And so organizing is one of those necessary tools to really create the policy changes that many people want to see.
Mm-hmm.
If we empower people to run for office and really support their process, I think that politicians will listen to us a lot more. and all the changes that many people want to do. For example, ending homelessness. If we had you know policymakers that understood the issue of homelessness, and maybe someone who was homeless themselves when they ran for a position and won, they'll bring in that perspective. And so it starts off with the kind of seeds that you implant in every person that you meet. And we have tenants who would love to run for office, but don't think that they have the power to do it or the people behind them to do it. But I'm sure if we had more money and more resources, we would be able to sign people up for academies, right? And processes that allow them to take that on. And then a whole community behind them that allows us to really push for the policies that we really want. If it was, rent control or like canceling rent, I'm sure if we had a pro renter, council, we would have those policies in at least at the most minimal in conversation. And so that's where I'm at. It's like, if foundations started funding more organizing work, we would really see more systems change happening.
Yeah.
And more systems, by systems, I'm talking about like the local politicians. They'll be listening to community more because, we can't compete against the corporate lobbyists. We can't compete against a corporation that's dumping money into a campaign, but we can definitely show up. And if we had more resources, we would be more than happy to bring 100 people to the next, city council meeting. But sometimes not having enough resources to, pay for transportation for people to show up causes a lot of the limitations. Because as organizers, we always do what we can for our community members, and if that means going and picking them up at their house, that's what we do. But we only fit 4 or 5 people. And if we had, a van that fit, 20 people, we'd go fill that van up at least 5 times and bring everybody down to the city council meeting.
Yeah, the people are there, and when they share their stories and experiences and demands, it's so powerful. There's a lot of barriers to getting there, but organizers like yourself really help people access it. So absolutely, more resources for organizing would really strengthen our democracy. So as we wrap up our interview, how can people get involved in and support LBRE's work?
So as of right now, since everything's digital, right, follow us on Facebook. That's where we update a lot of our stuff. Instagram. Over the pandemic, we've gained, approximately 300-400 followers. And that's just how active we've been, right? We've been putting out a lot of information out there, been active out in the streets, supporting the different movements that are happening and ensuring that we keep people home. And, that's where you'll find out for a call to action. If you yourself are facing a situation, we also offer a weekly legal clinic, right? So that's where we'll be posting the information. The only reason why I'm not announcing it right now is because there will be a time change on the legal clinic, but that's just logistical stuff that's being hashed out right now. And so once we have a new time, we'll be glad to put it up on our social media and people can call in, and it's somewhere where they can get like direct help. So follow us on social media. We just got our website, so check out our website. It's at www.we, so WERARE, and so that's for Long Beach Residents Empowered.org. And so www.werelbre.org. And it's a fresh new website. We're really excited to be launching it, and LBRE is in a new era, and nonetheless, we're really excited to be here, and we're hoping to expand and grow. And even if it's the most basic question about your rights, we'll be more than happy to assist you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So the website has been added to the comment box, and everyone should definitely check that out and follow LBRE on social media and donate if you can, get involved. Thank you so much, Beto, for spending some time today to share about your work.
No, and thank you so much, Christine, and the nonprofit partnership for even having this series and allowing nonprofits to really share the insights, right, of what's happening, not only during this moment, but like in the near future when this is all over. And so it's very helpful, and the TNP has been very good at supporting the nonprofits in Long Beach, and we're really grateful to be part of it. And so thank you so much, Christine and TNP.
Awesome, absolutely.